Good afternoon, seventh graders. I am in the building today, but I could not, I had some things I had to take care of this afternoon, so I won't be around to teach you exactly. So I'm recording this. So thanks, Mrs. Hughes, for being here to help them along with this, and here we go. So today we're talking about China. Just a couple things to introduce China today. So hopefully you wrote that. If I ever click too quickly and you don't get everything, just pause it until everybody has it written down. So today we're going to start with an overview. There's 4 quick thoughts I want to put out there for you with China. The first is, and this is kind of Chinese culture or kind of Chinese civilization. First of all, it's very old. The written records go back 3,300 years. For example, this oracle bone, this is considered written history. But archaeological finds go back 4,000 years. So things that we can tell through archaeology, not necessarily written stuff, 4,000 years. That's very old. And the difference is this is continuous culture from that time till now, where with like Egypt, ancient Egyptian culture is nowhere near what it is today. Now, I'm not saying modern Chinese culture is just like it was 4,000 years ago, but there's kind of a continuous strain there, continuous link. And you don't really have that with something like Egypt. It's also very influential. Hopefully from last year you remember how important Greek culture and then Roman culture is to Western civilization's development. That's how China is and Chinese culture is for Eastern civilizations. And when I say East, I'm not talking like Africa or the Middle East. I'm talking Asia, the Orient, that kind of thing. So Korean culture, Japanese culture, Vietnamese, etc. That whole part of the world has been very influenced by Chinese culture. It's also kind of ethnocentric, and part of that is because it's so influential. A lot of their achievements and things predate most other people's achievements of certain things. And so the Chinese thought that they were pretty superior to everyone and looked at everybody else as inferior. And that's held on a little bit. I don't know if it's as big as it used to be, though. And I think because of that ethnocentrism, China stayed very closed off to the rest of the world at certain points. Sometimes they were very open and trading and wanting ideas from other places. But other times they were very closed off and open only to themselves and not wanting their people to go out, not wanting outsiders to come in. So that was pretty typical too. So when you look at China today, I want to just go over a couple things. The first one is this, that China is the most populous country in the world. Over 1.3 billion people live in China. So billion, that's with the B. 20% of the world's population, 1 in every 5 people of the world are Chinese. So this is very interesting when you're looking at the populations of the U.S. and the world. So the world population, 7.3 billion, U.S. population, 323 million. But look at these, China, 1.3 billion, India, 1.2, United States, 321 million. So here's my point. United States, a lot of people, right? 321 million. China has 1 billion more people than we do. So you take the United States population, add 1 billion, that's China's population. So a lot of people. You notice on that chart, though, India's creeping up on them. They're only 100 million behind. China is the 4th largest country in land area, and I think it's Russia, maybe Canada's first. Canada, Russia, then I think the United States, and then China. So it is big physically, but it's the biggest in terms of population. Most people think India will catch China in the next few years, maybe the next 20 years, because China has population controls by law. Now they're loosening those a little bit, but India has none of that, so India will probably catch them. China, kind of related to that, China does have a communist government, and so there are a lot of human rights concerns, religious freedoms, some political freedoms like freedom of the press, freedom of speech, etc. People don't think those are all that open in China. So there's concern with that. World economics, China is a very new and very powerful competitor in economics. A lot of manufacturing has moved there. A lot of electronics are moving there. And notice, so that started in 1978. Mao Zedong died in 1976. So Took a couple years, but then they started to become more free economically, not so much politically. And so that's what helped them become so important. And we'll talk about that a little bit. People are concerned about them economically, partly because we owe a lot of money to them. A lot of our debt is to China. Don't know exactly what that all will mean at some point, but that's probably not good. One last thing, this is kind of trivial, but I think interesting to know and good to know as we start talking about some of the people. We would kind of consider their names backwards to us. So our given name is said first, and then our family name is last. So using these NBA jerseys as an example. So Kobe Bryant. Kobe's family name is Bryant, so that's what's on the back of his jersey. His given name is Kobe. Yao Ming, who you guys may not know him anymore. It's been a while since he played in the NBA, but he was Chinese. So Yao, which we say first, is really his last name. That's his family name. Ming is his given name. So Mao Zedong, Mao is the family name. Zedong is the his kind of given name, his first name. So I want to go ahead and pause this a second. I want you guys to talk about what that tells about Chinese culture when the family name is first and the given name is second. I'm sure you came up with a lot of great answers to that. My thought on that is it shows that the community, the group, the family is more important than the individual. And I think in the United States, we're very individualistic. And so it's just a little bit different approach. Hopefully you remember this symbol. We've had this in the Stuff to Know. This is the written Chinese word for China. And actually, I think this is really it. But these two together, those mean the Middle Kingdom. And that's, I think, a reference to China, that ethnocentrism, the thinking that we're so important, we're the middle of everything, we're the center of everything. So let's look at a couple things historically. China was ruled by emperors until 1911. So as far as you can really tell from their ancient history, until 1911, China was ruled by emperors. And in 1911, there was a revolution overthrowing the emperor, and that led to a civil war, and then the communists took over after that civil war period. The title of the emperor, one thing he was called is the Son of Heaven. And this is giving you the sense that he is there through supernatural powers, sort of, so it's not like he was elected or he was chosen by the community to be the leader. He was put there by heaven. So he's semi-divine, much like they would have thought of the Pharaoh, having a little bit more than human abilities. The term in Chinese is Di, which really means supreme ruler. So we'll kind of use that as emperor too. That's just kind of our way of referring to that. So so the emperor was to act as a father to the people. With all this power, there's a lot of responsibility. And if the emperor is to be the father, then the subjects were supposed to be like children to him and needed to be obedient and needed to be loyal. And that's kind of the way the society ran. That's how things were kept in order, how things worked. You've got the emperor, and then everybody's under his authority. They usually kept the emperor separate. So this is, I forget what year, but the Forbidden City was built, and that's where they lived. The court and all of their people lived in the Forbidden City, and that's in Beijing today. And that in Beijing has not always been the capital. That moved at certain times, but when it started to be the capital, that's where the emperor and his entourage, or whatever you want to call it, lived. And usually the emperorship passed down through families, and it may be the oldest son, it may be the son most capable of doing this, it might be a nephew, it might be a cousin. It was kept within the family, and that passing down of leadership is where we get the Chinese dynasties. And we'll talk more about the dynasties later this week. Okay, this is a very important concept to understand, the mandate of heaven. And what this is very similar to the divine right of kings. So if you studied last year with European monarchs and the whole idea that God has put this person in to be king, and that's why he's king, that's kind of like this. Now, I've got heaven in quotes here because their view of heaven is not exactly our view of heaven, and I want you to think of it more like the universe. Like the universe has done this, this almighty power thing, however you want to call that. We're just going to call it heaven here because they call it the term the mandate of heaven. So if you're a good ruler, heaven blesses you and keeps you in power, makes things go well. But if you're a bad ruler, you'll lose that mandate. Now here's the tricky part to this. If there's a mandate of heaven and there's an overthrow of a ruler, well, how do you explain that? I thought this person had the mandate of heaven. I thought they were a great ruler. How can they have been overthrown? Well, that's where this comes in. If they're a bad ruler, then they're going to get overthrown. So this is how, like, the new ruler can explain to the people, here's why I'm now the ruler. Even though the last person you thought had the mandate of heaven, they really don't anymore. I now have the mandate of heaven. So that mandate can be transferred. But here again, this is just a way for the new people to explain how they got in power where the old person used to have the mandate of heaven. If you need to pause on that screen, go ahead. I just want you to understand that whole idea of the mandate of heaven. Okay, the earliest period of time where they identify emperors is called the legendary period. This is about 3000 BC, and there were these 4 legendary emperors, and there's stories associated with each of these emperors. And there's really 2 purposes for these stories. One is to explain the origins of Chinese culture and technology. Where did farming come from? Where did writing come from? Well, where did silk making come from? Where did all this stuff come from? And so instead of, they probably really didn't even know. So they write these stories attributing the invention of these things to these emperors. It's also a way to encourage positive virtues in the current emperor and the people of China. So for example, if I want the current president to act a certain way, I might highlight something about Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, who we would kind of say, well, those are our legendary presidents. So I'm going to highlight a virtue of theirs, hoping that the current president would take a hint and have some of those attributes too. And if you need to pause here, go ahead and pause. Okay, so now that you can get familiar with these stories, you're going to get a story, and it's about one of these 4 legendary emperors, and I want you to read it and highlight or underline the character traits or the important accomplishments of this person. And these copies are going to stay here, so they're probably already marked up, and that's fine, but if you need to highlight more, go ahead and do that. So what you're looking for are their character traits: honest, hardworking, resourceful, whatever. What is it? What are the traits? Were the virtues mostly? And then what are their accomplishments? They tamed the floods. They invented writing. They invented music, whatever it might be. So be sure to look for those things. And if you need to take notes on that, so you have a record of that, do that too. Pause this if you need to. Just be sure you know what you're doing here. Character traits and accomplishments. Okay, then there's robes, and what I want you to do is trace the outline of that robe on a sheet of loose leaf, and then you're going to create a robe that this emperor, you could display showing this emperor's characteristics or accomplishments. You need 6 pictures and a caption for each. They need to be clear, colored, and neat. So for example, Huang Di, who invented the compass, you could draw a compass on his robe and then write a caption explaining how he invented the compass. Okay, so if you need to pause this and let this stay up as you're passing things out or writing this stuff down, otherwise I think you're good to go. These robes, let's see, let's make these due on Wednesday. That way, if you're not sure about something, you can ask me tomorrow, although I think this is pretty clear. So go ahead and work on these the rest of the period, and these are due Wednesday. I think that's it. So have fun, and I will see you guys later.